Welcome to the next module on PPC, the all-important subject that just really confuses a lot of people on Amazon. In this module, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how the PPC system works. I touched on it briefly in the last module. And at the end of this module, we're going to switch over to a screen share where I'm actually going to walk you through how to determine in a spreadsheet, I'll actually give you that's downloadable in this section, where you can actually determine what your actual maximum CPC or maximum bid should be, or where you should start out on your targeting. But just remember on PPC, just because you bid the highest doesn't mean that you're going to actually get the top placement. Like I said before, PPC is all about a combination of relevancy, probability, and money that you're willing to spend. So you can spend the highest amount of money, but if your past history, which could be your campaign that you've been running on PPC, if it just hasn't performed well, it's going to hurt you. Or if Amazon predicts in the future that you're, for whatever reason, that they think that you're likely not to actually make a sale from the click, they're not going to give you the click, even though you might be the highest bidder by a factor of 2 over somebody else. It's not just, Amazon's not just about how much money can we make from PPC, from just the PPC. It's how much money can we make from the PPC with the chance that someone's going to actually buy the product, so that we can make our commission on the product. It's a combination of the two of those. And a lot of people lose sight on that. You know, on a platform like Google, they don't really care what happens after you make the click. So if you're running Google sponsored ads, they want the maximum dollars they can off of that click. They don't really care. But on Amazon, there's a combination there, so it's a little bit different model. It's a little bit more sophisticated, actually, if you will. So the number one thing is relevance. So the search terms that people are typing in have to be relevant, or Amazon still won't show it. So they're not going to show your ad on top of some category that you're not relevant in. So it still uses that human engineered relevancy factor. Now sometimes there might be a keyword that you know is relevant, and maybe you're in the wrong category, and Amazon doesn't have that keyword as a stem or in their master list. You can actually kind of force relevance in a way. If you can run some ads on a keyword and actually get a couple sales on that keyword, it actually can force you to start being indexed and to be relevant on that keyword. And now sometimes those ads are a little bit harder to get. You got to get them in some obscure places, but sometimes that does happen when you're just, for whatever reason, not getting indexed, or Amazon's refusing to show you on a certain keyword. They're not giving you any credit there. If you can get a couple sales on that and force the system, that can actually increase your relevance. Now, one thing is you have to own the buy box in order to have your ad appear. So if you're sharing the buy box with somebody, this is mostly for wholesale people, your ad's not going to appear. Or if you've had a problem on your listing, your private label, and someone's doing arbitrage against you, or maybe you have a counterfeiter or someone that's come in and started reselling your product, and if they take the buy box from you, all of a sudden your ads are not going to appear. And so this can dramatically affect what's happening. So if your sales all of a sudden tank, or if your advertising spend all of a sudden goes down, and you're like, what the heck happened? Go check your buy box percentage. Go into your business reports, and you can actually see what percentage of the time you have the buy box. If that number has dramatically gone down, then you know that something is up. And you need to address that issue. Probability plays a huge factor in whether you're going to get the click on Amazon or not. So they know, based on the customer who's searching, based on their past buying history, based on how you've performed on this keyword, how this keyword's performed on similar things. And so they're going to use probability in determining the likelihood of a click. So when you're brand new, and it's a brand new ad, they don't have that data in the past. So when you're brand new, sometimes they give you the benefit of the doubt. But that's the problem is when you have a campaign that's not performing well, that past history can come in and hurt you because they have that data. So you want to make sure you set up stuff really good in the beginning, so you can come out of the gate and provide Amazon some really good data. The longer you advertise, the more they kind of know, and they kind of fine tune and optimize your campaigns for you just automatically on what you're gonna be showing on. But if you set up the initial groundwork wrong, they're gonna optimize wrong, and so that can not be a good thing. And the click-through rate, or CTR, is another really important thing. On Amazon, I personally consider anything below a 0.25% click-through rate to be bad. But that basically means 1 out of 400 people. So if 400 people see your ad, it shows up somewhere, and only less than 1 person out of 400 click it, then that's really bad. Something's not resonating with your ad. Now, Amazon, if you look at Amazon like AMS, their Amazon Marketing Services, that number is more like a 0.3 or 0.4. They actually quit showing your ad if it goes below those numbers. And when I'm looking at my search term reports later on, we'll talk about that in just a minute. I look at some very specific parameters on keywords that I'm going to target based on click-through and based on impressions and based on sales. We'll talk about that in just a second. But click-through rate is super important. Typically, if you get about 10 clicks and you don't make a sale, that's a word you need to take a look at. I like to see at least about a 10% conversion rate, basically, on the click-through rate. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. Another thing is the structure of your campaigns. You got to make sure when you're setting these up, remember I told you that exact carries more weight than phrase, and then phrase carries more weight and then manual. If you bid and you put your phrase campaign at a higher bid than your exact campaign, for example, it's going to limit your exact campaign from showing. So it's really important to me to make sure my exact shows first, because that's a dead-on target for a keyword that I'm targeting that should convert, or I've used my data to know that it converts. So I always put the exact at the highest bid, the phrase at the second highest bid, and then the broad at the lowest bid if I'm running all three together for the same keywords. That way they won't compete with themselves, and that way I know my exact is always going to take precedence. So that's the way I do it. Another thing is you have to think about is older campaigns. If you have an old campaign, they have a lot of data, and Amazon kind of gives them a little bit of extra credence. So if you quit running a campaign, you might want to consider not actually stopping it completely. You might actually want to consider just lowering the bid to a few cents. And so that basically you're not going to get any clicks, but it stays active. You're not archiving it. Because if you archive a campaign, it actually loses a lot of its importance on Amazon. So older campaigns, I've actually had cases where I started a brand new campaign for a product, even though there's no data. Amazon gave me a little bit of love, but when I had an old campaign that wasn't paused. I didn't pause it. I kept it live. You can pause them too, but I kept it live with a really small bid, and I went back and kind of changed that small bid to a big bid again. They used all that past data, which is actually good data. If it's bad data, it's not good, but it was good data, and actually it outperformed the new campaign. So you want to keep that in mind too, is if something's not working, you might want to consider, if you're just done with it, you can archive it or pause it. But if you think you might come back to it and try to figure something out later, you might just lower the bid a little bit, and that way it stays active, and it stays as an older kind of aged campaign. That's really important. The other thing is you can't really force an old campaign to work. So if an old campaign that you were doing before you took this course didn't work for you, don't go back in there and stuff that you've learned from this course and change it and keep running it. I would recommend you start fresh, because if it's an old campaign that you kind of just mucked it up, you're going to want to go back and not try to revive it. You're going to want to start fresh and just kill that thing off. Only if it was good data and it was working before and you just paused it or something, or put it to a low bid, then you could bring it back. But if it was something that you just wasn't working for, you just forget it, because it's got some bad data in there, and start fresh. Now the reporting on Amazon, they give you some live reporting so you can see it, but it's not in real time. It can be delayed up to a week. Usually it's 24 to 48 hours. They're getting better about this, but some of the clicks don't come in until like 7 to 10 days later. So some straggler, somebody adds it to the cart, and they're waiting for their payday. They add it to the cart on Tuesday. They're waiting for their payday on Friday. They get paid, then they go back on Saturday on the weekend and go ahead and buy the item, and then it gets credited back. So you got to take a look, kind of like almost 7 days in arrears. But the tools like from Helium 10, the PPC tool is a great tool that can help you see some of this stuff in a better way than what some of the reporting on Amazon does. So the other thing I look at when I'm looking at my reporting is when I'm downloading the search term report, for example, and you'll see that in one of the upcoming modules. I analyze that search term report, and I'm looking for the gems in there. And for me, the gems are the keywords that are getting 1,000. I like to see 1,000 impressions. So that means it's been shown at least 1,000 times. I like to see a click-through rate of 0.4%. So zero, that's basically 1 out of every 250 people are actually clicking on it. And I like to see 2 or more sales. If I see that 2 or more sales, a click-through rate of 0.4 or higher and 1,000 impressions, that tells me that's probably a pretty good keyword. And that's something I might want to take out of that search term report if it's in an auto campaign and move it over to an exact, or I might want to bump up the bids on it, or I might put some extra emphasis, or see what the keywords are for that other products on that keyword. Go into the into Amazon or into the one of the tools from Helium 10 like Blackbox and see what other products are around that keyword and start product targeting them. So that's some of the stuff that I will do when I'm looking at the report. So we'll show you how to optimize in a future module, a little bit more detail there. The other thing you always have to know is your break-even cost. You really need to know what is your break-even point. And so if you're selling your product for $20, it costs you $6 to have it made, another $2 to get it into Amazon's warehouse. Amazon's charging you $3 to ship it out, and you're paying Amazon another $2, say $3 in commission. That's about 14 bucks, I think, if I did that math in my head right, all added up. And you're making a $20 sale. So you've got about $6 roughly in profit potential on this. So that means you can basically spend about $6 per sale on advertising to totally break even. So that means to figure out you could create a target ACost off of that. ACost stands for Advertising Cost of Sales, ACOS. It's your total ad spend divided by your sales. So in this case, if my ad spend had happened to be, my break even is $6. So if I assume that I want to break even, that means I can spend all my profits, which is $6. So I'm going to do $6 divided by 20. And what is 6 divided by 20? About 30% or so, roughly. So that means my target ACost would be about 30% if I was just trying to break even. Sometimes I actually don't care if my target ACost is 100%, which means I'm technically losing money on every sale that comes from advertising. But sometimes I'm willing to lose money on advertising sales, and especially this is going to be probably happen when you first launch. You're going to have to be willing to lose money because you need to get the momentum going. So for the first few weeks or maybe in the first month, your ACost might be 100% or more, but you got to stay on top of it and make sure you're actually making sales. You don't want some crazy ACost and you're not making sales. But if it's making sales and you're using the keyword tracker tool on Helium 10 and you're seeing that you're rising from page 9 to page 6 to page 3 to page 2, and you're having to spend money and lose money, it's the same as if you went out and did a big discount, or if you did a rebate, or you did some other type of promotion. You're losing money there too. It's a cost of business. And so the other thing I look at over time is my total ACost. And so I want to take a look at how much, not only does it cost me $6 to make a $20 sale, but what is my total advertising spend across my entire sale. So my ACost on break even might be 30% in this particular case, but my total or my tacos might be much less because when I factor in my organic sales, let's say I made one sale by PPC and it cost me $6, and I made 2 sales that weren't PPC. So my total sales are now $60, and I spent the same $6 in advertising. So if I'm targeting a 30% ACost, I'm breaking even on that advertising sale. But if I'm targeting, say, a 15% tacos, then I would take the 60 and 15% of that means I could actually spend a little bit more money on my PPC. I could actually spend I could spend a little bit more to reach that goal. Or the flip side, let's give a better example. Let's say you actually sell 5 units, and they're $20 each. So 5 times 20 is $100. So you made $100 in sales. And let's say one of those units came through PPC, because typically your PPC should be about 20 to 25% of your total sales. Now in the beginning, it may be 80% or 100% in the first couple weeks, and that's okay. But once you get ranked and you start over time, it should level out to about 20 to 25% of your overall sales is a good target for your PPC. Now some cases it could be different, but let's go back to our example where you sold 5 units for $20 each. So and one of those sales came from PPC. So if one sale came from PPC, using our numbers that we just talked about where we're making $6, and let's say we spent $6 to make that sale, that's a 30% ACost on that one sale of $20. But if I factor that into my total sales of $100 and I spent $6, that's a 6% tacos. And now your tacos should be about 10%. So if you look at ask any of the investment people that buy Amazon businesses, they'll tell you that you should be at about roughly 10%. If you're lower than that, great. But if you're about 10%. So what that means is I could raise my advertising spend. So instead of worrying about my ACoS breaking even, maybe I'm willing to spend a little bit more money to get on top of the page or to get on some other placements or to get on somebody else's products where I'm not quite as successful, but maybe I had to spend $10 to make 2 sales or something. Then my tacos in this case could be 10%. If you look at the spreadsheet, we'll talk about this in more detail and you'll see exactly how this works. But that's why you can't just pay attention to ACoS. And so many people make this major mistake of just paying attention to ACoS because it's not the whole picture. It's just part of the picture. It's an important part to know, but you got to go beyond that. Because you want to have about 75 to 80% of your sales coming organically, and your PPC can help raise all of that stuff. I recommend you go in and you check your PPC about once a week, just to monitor it. You can go into either do it manually or hopefully you're using the Helium 10 PPC tool, which is even automating some of this process for you and making some of these adjustments for you because you put in some pretty good parameters. But that's some of the basics there on PPC, and the tools can really make some of this easy for you because you can put in rules and you can put it in. If you take a look, there's a addendum module here, a 0.1 that's coming after this that'll actually show you exactly how to use the Helium 10 tool to really optimize and how to set up these rules and stuff. Bradley's in there talking about how to exactly use this tool. So take a look at that as well, so you know how to really use the tool, because this is something you really need to understand. And so I hope this has helped you. Now, stay tuned. I'm just about to switch the screen here in just a second. I'm going to walk you through a couple spreadsheets and how to figure out your maximum bid that you should do and your maximum tacos, and see. I want you to see how these interplay. We'll walk through a spreadsheet with some specific examples. So I'll see you in just a second. All right, what we want to do now is take a look at this spreadsheet. You can download this spreadsheet in the handouts for this section, but this is just a quick little estimator to see what you should consider bidding when you first start on your PPC. Later on, you're going to want to make a lot of adjustments to this based on what's performing, what's working, what's not working, what your goals may be, but this is just at least a starting point. Now there's 3 types of bids that you can place. One is called dynamic bids, down only. And what this allows Amazon to do is adjust your bid, but they can only go down. They can't raise your bid, they can only go down. And they do it based on whether or not they think there's a high chance that someone that clicks on your ad is actually going to end up in a sale. And they use some complicated algorithms and formulas for this, but they can take it all the way down to 0, where they basically make your bid non-existent if they just think that nobody's going to buy your product based on this keyword. Dynamic bids up and down basically gives them the ability to do the down part, but they can also raise your bid, basically double your bid if they want to. If they think that it's got a high chance of someone clicking and buying, they can raise it by twice, by 100%, and put it on the top of page 1. Or if they feel the top of page 1, someone else has outbid you, they can still raise you by up to 50% and get you in some sort of other placement. Maybe it's on the sidebar, on the bottom of page 1, or somewhere else. So if they think there's a high chance of someone ended up in a sale, they can raise your bid up, or they can also go down if they think the chances are a little bit lower. This used to be called bid plus in the old days. Then there's fixed bids. Fixed bids are bids where this is the price you're willing to pay, and that's the price. So either you're going to win the auction at that price, or Amazon's going to not give you the auction at that price. I don't really recommend fixed bids in the beginning. It can be a little tricky. So those are used in certain circumstances, and I wouldn't recommend you start out with those in the beginning. Now there's some other placements you can do where you can actually place your product if you only want it to show up on the search results page and you don't want it to show up on product results pages. So in this case, you're able to adjust your bid by up to 900%. So you can say you can raise your bid by up to 900% to make it really strong if there's a high chance that you can show up on the top of a search results page versus just showing up on somebody else's product page. So, but there's some basic assumptions that you got to take into mind here. One is your product selling price. So let's just say I'm selling this for $24.88. And let's say I know my profit margin's 25%. Now on Amazon, you may not know your conversion rate if you just launched your product. If you've been selling your product for a while, you actually may have that data. You can go into Seller Central and look in the business reports and get the reports for unit session percentage by child ASIN, and you can get a rough idea of what that is. But if you don't know what it is, typically on Amazon, anything below about 7% is not good. That means there's typically something wrong with your price or your images or your listing. You want to be shooting for that 10 to 15% range if you can. The average on Amazon, for example, is a little bit over 8%. So that means that you really need to be shooting for that mid-range or higher. Some people can see conversion rates even higher than that, but that's where I would target. So in the beginning, because you don't have reviews, because you're just getting going, this is probably going to be a little bit lower than normal. So you might even put it at 7, maybe even at 5%, because just it's going to be kind of bad probably coming out of the gate. And your target ACost, if you know what this is what you're willing to spend on advertising. Basically, it's how much of this $24.88 am I willing to spend to make a sale, to actually make a sale. And in the beginning, it might have to be 100%. You basically may be giving away all $24.88 to make a sale, which means you're not making any profit on each one of these sales. After Amazon takes their fees, you have your cost to make it, you're not making any profit. But in some cases, it's necessary just to start getting people to click on the keywords and to associate a keyword with your product so that you can start ranking better organically. So don't be skimpy here in the beginning. You may need to be a little bit aggressive and just understand you may have to lose a little bit of money in the beginning to get it going. So let's just call it for right now. Let's say I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to go 100%. And the next one we're going to enter here is the number of organic sales for every PPC sale. The number of organic sales for every PPC sale. Now this is basically how many organic. Organic means that they just typed a search. They did not click on an ad. They just found you in the listings and they bought it. Your goal is to have a lot more of these than you have PPC sales. Amazon would like it the other way. They want you to spend more on advertising, but the goal is to get more people to buy it organically without you having to run an ad. A good ratio for this might be 4 or 5 to 1 once you get going. But in the beginning, when you're first launching your product, it might be a 1-to-1 ratio. It might be like 1 PPC sale happens for every 1 organic sale. So I'm just going to put a 1 here to start with, which is a really low number. Like I said, ideally you want to get that a little bit higher over time. But now this is going to do some calculations. So the maximum amount you can spend per sale is $24.88 because we said 100% ACost. You know, see if I change this ACost to say 50%, that's going to cut in half to $12.44. But let's just leave it at 100 for this starting point, which some people will be like, wow, that's really high. But in the beginning, you may need to do that to get some ranking. And then you can lower that over time once you start figuring out which keywords are working and which ones aren't. The number of clicks to make a sale, it's going to take 20 clicks at this conversion rate. 20 people are going to have to click before I get 1 sale. And so the maximum I can spend per click is going to be $1.24. That's my maximum bid. So on Amazon, if it's saying the recommended bid is $4 or something, when you're going in and setting this up and your max is $1.24, that's going to be very difficult for you to get clicks on, to get placement on this ad. You're going to have to be pretty much picking up remnant space. The maximum you can spend before any of the dynamic bid adjustments is 62 cents, the ones that are talking about up here. And the placement adjustment, it's not showing up here, but the one where I said you can get onto page 1 if you want to make a really low bid and then raise it up to 700%, that means you need to bid 8 cents on one of those. Now you can see if I change some of these, if I get 2 organic sales for every 1, some of these numbers down here change. Let's put it back at 1, or if I get my conversion rate, if I can get that up to just the average on Amazon of about 8%, it changes all these. So this is why everything kind of plays together hand in hand. Now your break-even ACost in this example right here is 25%. So that's where you're breaking even. So if I'm spending a target to 100%, I'm losing money hand over fist on every single sale. So if you take a look at this overall advertising cost of sales right here, it's at I just played with some numbers a little bit. It's at 24%.
my total ACoS is 48%, and my profit margin is 25. As long as this number is below the profit margin, you're actually making money and you can scale. You want to get this down to hopefully about 8 to 10% if you can. So just based on these numbers here, let's just play with it. So if I hit 30%, 20%, 25% gets me to 13, 20% gets me to 10. So basically, I need to shoot for a target ACoS over time. If my conversion rate stays at 8%, of about 20% to get this overall to about 10 based on all these other numbers. Now, if I get my conversion rate up, and say I raise that to 12% on my conversion rate, that can help me on these numbers down here as well. So these are some important things to keep in mind as you're going. Play around with this. This is not an exact scientific method here. This is just a way to get you going, get you in the ballpark, and get you thinking along the right terms. So hopefully this has helped you, and we'll see you in the next module.